The artists who shape a culture are not always the ones standing in the spotlight. Sometimes they work quietly behind the scenes. And Jannicke Wiese-Hansen is one of those artists. Long before Norwegian black metal became a global phenomenon, before documentaries, museum exhibitions and endless reproductions of its visual language, there were a handful of young artists who shaped the identity of the new movement. Logos were drawn by hand, ideas for album covers were exchanged between friends, and few of them imagined that the imagery would travel far beyond Norway. Now, over the past 3 decades, Jannicke's work has moved fluidly between tattooing, painting, logo design and illustrations. Her art definitely still carries traces of the black metal atmosphere, but also of something much, much older. Norwegian stave churches, weathered wood carvings, fragments of Norse mythology, and the feeling that culture lingers inside the landscape that surrounds us. I wanted to learn a bit more about her story, and a few weeks back I had the pleasure of meeting up with Jannicke at Tysnes, an island south of Bergen from which my own family have their roots. Throughout our chat we dug into the early days of black metal, sources of inspiration, her artistic style, and her own view on cultural heritage. This is the art and story of Jannicke Wiese-Hansen. Who is Jannicke Wiese-Hansen?
I think I'm 3 things. I'm a tattoo artist, I'm a metal merch and album cover designer and logos, and I'm an artist with paintings and such. You know, except for the other things, that mom for 2 kids and all that stuff. I think I was drawing before I was walking, pretty much. And if we went to holiday when I was little with my mom and she forgot something to, like paper and pens so I could draw, I just wanted to go home. So I would always sit and draw. When I was like 7, I would pretend to be asleep and my mom would go to bed and I would sneak downstairs and draw until 3 o'clock in the morning and always be late for school. And my mom never understood why I was so tired. So drawing has been my thing the whole time. And then I guess it kind of changed. Well, I think my first publications were in Archie, the magazine.
What's that?
It's like a cartoon, teenage cartoon back in the 80s. And they had like fashion. You could draw like fashion model and clothes and stuff. So I would send in and I was published a few times. I was very proud.
Nice.
So looking at those drawings now, I'm like, oh, well, but that's how you draw when you're 14. So
Yeah.
But I think the going back in or going into paid jobs was with the black metal community, making logos and album covers and that kind of thing for them. And then that kind of landed me an apprenticeship as a tattoo artist at Let's Buzz in Bergen. Because he came to ask me if I had done the Immortal logo, and I said yes. And if I could make, because he newly opened a tattoo shop. So he asked if I could draw something for him so he can use as flash up on the walls. And I did that, and then I became an apprentice after a while. So they're connected, all the things. But yeah, I've always been very focused on riding the waves as they come.
Yeah.
Instead of letting them go and see if there will be another wave another time to ride, because there won't be. So to make it, you have to take the opportunities that come, even if they don't really maybe fit your schedule or anything. Sleep is underrated, or overrated, I mean.
How would you describe your art style?
It's a mix. Now when I paint, it's mostly Nordic wood carving styles, like the kind of wood carvings that you'd find on stave churches, very inspired by that. Or the old finds of like the Oseberg ship. But I also dabble in more of a dark black metal style, much in black and gray. So I don't know. It's dark and Nordic, maybe the combo there.
Talking about the wood carving style, you see that type of ornamentation on, you know, archaeological digs and stave churches. Is that like primarily where you found your style from?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of it. But I've added my own style to it also. I think a lot of it is very inspired by the Hylestad portal. That's like the portal is what's around the doors on stave churches. And they're extremely ornamental often and beautiful. And the Hylestad stave church, the portal from that, has little scenes of men forging swords and such. And the way these men are made is I really bring into my art when I go for more like Nordic myth and Thor and Odin and everything.
Yeah.
But I kind of draw them in that kind of setting.
Yeah.
Very inspired by that portal.
Yeah.
So, but then I mean, a lot of the Nordic tattoo artists are very set on things being very authentic and the old style, but I kind of use the old style. Like I can do a sleeve and combine the Oseberg style and the Urnes style, which is from a Viking ship and from a stave church, and they're very spread out in years. I think it's like 400 years between the two styles. And it feels a little bit blasphemic to mix them, but I still do. Because, yeah.
I think, you know, that's what art is about, mixing references and creating something new.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you pretend, I mean, if it's important for you to stay true to the original findings and just do things historically, then you do that. As long as but you can mix and do your own style as long as you're more honest about that.
Would you then say that your art style is more inspired by culture rather than nature? Or is it a mixture?
It's a mixture because I often will combine a Nordic art piece and then make the mountains and the fjords of Norway in the background in a more watercolor style. So I mix them a lot. So they're both, and also when I do the wood carving style, I'll try to crack the wood and I'll have little insect holes in it, and so it's very pulled over in each other, the nature and the mythology and the style I work in. Because nature is important. I mean, how can it not be?
And we're now at Tysnes. Location undisclosed, I guess.
Yeah.
But this is one of my favorite places on Earth, and it's something about the nature that kind of calms you down, and in a sense, it lends some sort of inspiration. I think. Do you feel like the same
Yes.
way?
And especially the forests around here are so old. It's like moss on everything, and you have the old rock fences that has belonged to farms that are long gone now, and it's all covered in moss, and it's still just traces from the past in the middle of all the wilderness with the old almost dead trees, that kind of gnarly ones. Tim Burton was probably here looking at things when he was making some trees. I think it's really, really beautiful out here. And I was here a lot when I was a little kid, because my dad used to live here in a camper on a cliff above salmon fish farm. And my grandfather had a fish farm at Onarheim.
Oh.
And he was the first one, the pioneer in the world, to set salmon out in the ocean and not just have them on tanks on land.
Oh.
Before the medication and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Before the shit went into it. But he was the first one who did that in the world. And my dad was the first one to work on a sea-set fish farm.
You said that from very early on you loved to draw. But when did you realize that you wanted to work with art professionally?
It was either art or animals.
Okay.
Like marine biologist with a special specialization on the giant octopus. Yeah, to be specific. But no, art, I just wanted to make art without having to be extremely commercial, because I didn't feel like going into illustrating, well, commercial ads and think about what can sell and how do I entice the most people. Like I would want to be an independent artist, sort of. Um, and the whole tattoo business was kind of coincidental. My whole life is kind of coincidental. Something happens, and then I do that, and then it's So, and it's kind of how it went with the tattooing as well. I got the idea of maybe I can do that, and I asked him to be an apprentice, and he couldn't let me be an apprentice at the time. So I was like, well, that didn't happen. Moving on. And then a year after, he was like, do you still want to be a tattoo artist? Because now you can be an apprentice. And I'm like, yes, I do. And then that happened. So I could start living off my art and then also doing other paid jobs.
There's a lot of very, very great, technically proficient artists who work as tattoo artists as well.
Yes.
Even though there is a divide between you know the fine art type of scene and the tattoo artist, it's like frowned upon in a sense. I get the feeling of, even though I've never understood it.
It's getting a lot better.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, because now there's almost like a division in those fine art tattoo artists, and they make prints and paintings that are completely incredible. And I think it's more, it's not that looked down upon anymore. No. I don't know. I've seen the change. I've tattooed for over 30 years now and done the album covers for over 30 years, and there's a really big change from the mid 90s to now in recognition of the art in tattooing. Because it was very frowned upon in the 90s. Yeah.
But tattooing in black metal is, of course, something that is very well connected, I guess.
I'd say, though, it's tattooing in the music scene.
Yeah.
Not in particular black metal. It's
rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was exposed to it because I started working at Garage, the rock pub in Bergen, in the old days. I ended up being a bouncer there, and I worked there for 4 or 5 years. And of course, everyone had tattoos. Yeah. So.
A lot of people will recognize you from the work that you've done in relation to Norwegian black metal. You know, logo works with Enslaved, with Immortal, with Ancient, and, you know, front covers for Satyricon and Burzum. It's very well-respected stuff for what it was, but how did you get into the scene back then?
We were 3 friends who listened to metal, and we were 14, 15. And then we started hanging out with other like the guys that, because we were the only girls in Bergen listening to metal, like that extreme metal. And then we just started hanging out with the guys that liked metal. And then they started making bands, like this band called Immortal was getting to be a band, and they needed a logo, and we're just hanging out in the living room of one of their parents, and Demonus is just like, well, we need a logo, so we want you to do it. And I was like, well, I've never done that before. And they're like, no, but you can cut it. That's fine. We want it to be unreadable, but very recognizable in the shape. It needs an inverted cross in it, and it needs to be cool. It's like, okay. And I started drawing that. And then this band, who used to be called Phobia, who wanted to change the name to Enslaved, they needed a logo. They needed another logo after a little while because they were not as black metal as they figured in the beginning. They wanted more a Viking feel to it, so I changed the logo. And Burzum wanted the album covers and a logo for the demo. So I just became the go-to logo designer here. But you have like in Eastern Norway, you had Tanja Stene, who did a lot of like the Ulvar and the album covers for Dark Throne, but we kept in the shadows mostly. Yeah.
There's like a couple people, I think, that was very, very much a part of creating the aesthetics of black metal, and it's kind of underspoken in a sense. And I think that you're one of them, for sure, with the early logos particularly. I think that was a very important distinction from, you know, the more death metal oriented stuff, and the fact that black metal was its own thing. You have Christoph Speidel, for instance, incredible artist and logo maker. And yeah, but in terms of creating the aesthetics, I think that is you've played a very important role in it. And when you kind of think back on like the influence that you've had or the impacts that you've had on the music scene, the black metal scene, do you ever think about that, or do you have any thoughts about that?
Recently, I've understood that I had the impact. Took a while, like, I don't know, 25 years. Because sometimes people will introduce me as, yeah, she made all the logos and blah, blah, blah back then. And I'm like, no, it wasn't really that many. I mean, of course it was quite a few, but it feels like if you look at the Lord of the Logos, like Christoph, who has done so many logos. But I guess there wasn't that many bands back then either. So percentage-wise, I did a lot of logos and album covers. But yeah, it's kind of nice now to just recognize or realize more that I was a part of making that happen. Kind of nice.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. But for a very long time, I didn't even say anything because I felt it was very, like, back in the day, I just did stuff for friends. None of us saw that things would blow up as it did. And like the first Burzum album cover became very iconic. I heard about people in South America who had altars with that album cover on that they worshipped. I mean, it went completely nuts. Also with, of course, the history that belonged to that at some point. But it felt very much like bragging to say, oh, I did that, you know. So I just didn't even put it up on Facebook that I did a lot of stuff. Until I was going to make a festival in 2015 called Black Metal.
Which was part of it.
Yeah. And it was, you know, the kind of, it was tattooing and it was black metal. And I was going to invite some tattoo artists I didn't know and a few bands that I didn't know from before, Norwegian bands. And I had to show that I also had a little bit of an impact in that scene. So that's when I came out of my logo closet and just started to rehearse owning up to things.
And you're still making logos. I know you did Galsvird's logo.
Yeah. And Angel is the last one I've done, son of Ishan.
Yeah.
18 years old and so ridiculously good.
Yeah. And you still find joy in creating logos, because it's a very big part of the identity of somebody who is not yourself. It must be weird to have that kind of. There must be a lot of pressure in trying to convey the essence of a band through, you know, pen and ink, basically.
Maybe it helps being a tattoo artist, because I always have to work with another person in conveying what they want their skin to say. I haven't thought about that before, but that might be, since I'm quite trained then in trying to figure out what people really want. But I don't do that many logos anymore because I don't have time for it. So it is special once in a while. And Angel was just second generation black metal, so of course, know the father and then for the son is very cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You remember the first time you had created like a drawing or a painting, and you thought to yourself, this is a proper work of art?
No. Well, no, I'm very happy with the two bigger paintings that I did for Inferno, the exhibition at Inferno a few years ago. There I felt like, okay, that looks good. But it's almost always, it's something like, oh, I could have gone, did this better on a painting, or it should be more like this and that, because you're never completely 100% happy.
You're chasing perfection, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was quite happy with those two big ones. One of them is with Tyr holding his hand in the mouth of Fenris.
Yep.
And the other one is just kind of it's called Winged Creature because it is a winged creature, very inspired by Stave Church ornamentals.
Yeah.
So, but like looking back at some of the album covers, the first Burzum is cool. The second one is horrible. A lot of the aesthetics on the first Satyricon album is cool. And then there is the horse, which I'm not very happy with because I'm not good at drawing horses. They're very difficult. They're very gracious and beautiful, but they're a lump on four skinny legs. And to make that convert into gracious and beautiful is very difficult. So yeah. I have to mention the series I did with coins for Isle of Man. Yeah. Because I think that's one of the greatest achievements I've done. Because the Samlahuset of Norway, like the coin house or whatever from Norway, called me and asked me if I wanted to do coins for the Queen of England and Isle of Man. The memorial coins for the Viking rule they had for 400 years. And it turned into 26 coins of gold and silver. And every sketch I did had to be approved at Buckingham Palace. And it's just so far away from doing those little black metal album covers and stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize until after 2 years, it was an article about me and the coins in a local newspaper, and people read it, and I was out on town, and people came over like, that was a real honor for you to do that. And I didn't realize it until then, because, I was tattooing. I had 2 little kids trying to do deadlines for the coins, sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night for a whole year. And it didn't set in my mind until somebody started saying that was really cool. I was like, oh, okay then. Yes, it was.
What would you say have been your biggest source of inspiration? Is it something within? Is it something without? What makes you want to sit down and go, I want to make something?
I think it's just my brain going into overdrive a lot. But everything can be an inspiration. Music, visiting the museums and seeing the old things, hearing a new myth that I haven't heard before or something. The other day, I met up with my very good friend, Sean Perry, who runs Sacred Knot Tattoo in Wales. And he's very into Celtic mythology, also the Nordic one, but very, very much into the Welsh mythology and the Celtic. And we threw a challenge at each other and immediately started drawing it. So that can be as easy as that, like, how would you draw this? And then you're like, oh, wait, I'm going to draw it like that. And then you just start. And he did exactly the same with what I gave him. So it can really happen. But I mostly paint at night. I've been better at painting a little bit in the daytime. But mostly when the world falls asleep around me, that's when I wake up in my head and start painting and drawing. And, as when I was a kid, when I went downstairs and started drawing until 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm still that kid drawing until 3 a.m. in the morning. So now I have a tattoo. Mostly I started at 1. Because, wanting to be the person who starts at work at 10, but then you sit and work with something until 5, there has to be a little bit of sleep involved somewhere in the daytime.
Sure.
So I've just moved the night from there to there, and that works for me.
It's funny how people who are creative seem to find most of that, willpower to work on creative projects while everybody else is asleep. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, it's just like if you set the stage light on everything in the world, and when that falls asleep, it kind of goes like, and you get this calmness to just focus on your thing because nothing else is happening out there. You don't have to be there for anyone else. The kids are sleeping. You can fully just be you.
It's kind of similar with nature, I think, when you position yourself not where it's like super busy around and you have noises from cars and roads and people running around in the street. It's like you get that sort of same sensation as if everything is asleep,
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I enjoy about this place myself. You have that kind of calmness around it that to me is very necessary, I guess is the right word.
Yeah, because we live downtown Bergen, and we do all the Bergen stuff. And just to calm your mind to go into nature is really, really important. I'm really happy I have a dog, so I can walk her and just, I'm not pretending that I'm going hiking every day because there's no time for that, but not mountain hiking anyway, but just be a part of nature for a while every day is really nice.
Yeah. After working with creative fields for so long, what still kind of excites you as an artist today? Is there anything, I guess we can break it up into, the logos and the cover artwork and, the tattooing. And I guess there's different motivations and different, things that excite you in each and every one of those categories, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, tattooing is what I do most. And I still get really excited when people come with ideas that I really like. They have an idea and they present me with their body part, and I get to just go with markers and go crazy and figure out how to interpret best what they want. And I sit very calmly on the outside, but on the inside I'm like that. And I'm so happy I still have that after over 30 years. That it's not like, oh, okay, I'll do that. You have to find different, if people want Odin, I have to try to find a little bit of a different way of making him every time, which is a challenge. I get excited by cover-ups, by fixing up tattoos that people are not happy with, because it's making them happy, and it's always a challenge. So challenges are good, definitely.
There must be something very intimate about, sitting and working on a human being as well.
Very.
Is that something that makes you a bit sharper, in a sense, you reckon?
Yeah. But it also makes it when you're done tattooing, at least I'm very worn out for, I'm just plain stupid for half an hour afterwards, because especially if they're hurting, and because you pick up a lot, you're so close to that person and you're trying to talk them through, you're trying to get the tattoo done while they're still in the chair. They share a lot of things with you because it's such an intimate bond that they will tell you the world, like if you're a therapist. So it can be very exhausting, but in a very good way, because people are happy afterwards, and that you made them. They feel better, even after all the pain they had with me. I often say it's a special place in hell for people like me, but okay.
Well, one beer usually sorts the pain out, I guess.
Yes, definitely.
That's very good. So if we move on to the bit more, let's call it the fine art, Jannicke. You've been creating a lot of different prints. You have a lot of original works of art that are very, very beautiful, I think. Is that something that you want to do more of, or is it something that you feel is like a natural part of your artistic journey to have that kind of side, with the gallery showcasing and such?
I think it's like a natural evolvement of the career. I mean, I'm still tattooing as much as I did all the other years. But now I have, like last year I had my first solo exhibition in like a proper art gallery, and that was really nice. So of course it would be cool to do more of that. And being a part of the art tent Tons of Rock, for instance, is also really nice because it has nothing to do with the tattooing. It is for the art. So yeah, I want to do more of that. I'm also planning on making like a book series where it's 60% illustrations of Nordic myth, but in my style and in proper paintings, like not cartoonish style at all. So, and I want to do so much other stuff also, but you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you've been a part of the broader art industry for quite some time now. The same goes for the tattooing industry. But for people starting out today, if you were to give them one single advice, what would you tell them?
With artistry or tattooing?
You decide.
Because with tattooing right now, it's so many tattooers, same amount of clients, but it's a hard job to get into now. So think about it a lot before you go down that road. But with art and everything, just draw as much as possible and just go for it. Ride those waves that come by, because that's the ones you have to ride to get anywhere, I think. One thing that excites me is to bring the Norwegian and Norse cultural heritage, to bring it out to the world in a different way, but try to make it in the style of the old Nordic wood carvings and that kind of thing. So you combine the myth and the history with the texture of old. And I know nobody else does that in the tattooing world, and it's become my style. Completely coincidental, of course, as always. Although I've always been very taken by wood carvings. But to leave behind a different way of exposing the Norwegian culture is really nice, because people need to see the art and hear the history and the myths, because they're all awesome.
Shining a new light on Nordic cultural heritage, I guess.
In the healthy way.
In a healthy way.
In the healthy way. Take it away from the unhealthy way.
I love, national romantic paintings, and it's gotten like this weird entanglement with the wrong types of people, like Tidemann and Gude, and some of the most beautiful paintings ever created from Norway, and it's a celebration of Norwegian landscape and culture in a sense. But a lot of people with the wrong idea, they grab onto it and say, oh no, this is mine, and because we have this, I am better than you guys.
Yeah.
Which is very sad.
Yes.
Very sad.
It's abuse of the cultural heritage. With the runes and the Norse gods also, it's been misused far too long on the far right. So we need to take them back and make them healthy and nice again, because it's culture. It's not hatred, it's culture, and it's beautiful, and it needs to stay beautiful.
And not get sullied by this shit.
Yes. I know Valdruna also in their music is taking it back. I've been on a few panels on stage with Einar and like Ivar of Enslaved, and all of us who dabble with the Nordic expressions. We need to just get them back to a healthy place. Like to Ola also at my shop, who does a lot of like he does only hand poking, but he does the Nordic styles. It's important for us to have them healthy.
For sure. When you are in your 80s, what do you hope that your artistic legacy will be?
Well, I do hope that some of it is the book series about Norse mythology, to get the focus back on our culture in there, because the stories are amazing. And I don't know, just a new way of it's a lot of answers to the question. I want to still be working when I'm 80. If I can, I want to still tattoo, because I can't imagine how it would be to retire. Because what would I do? Like, all the stuff that I don't want to do. But to show Norwegian culture in a different way, like doing the actual wood art feeling to things, if it be paintings or tattooings or drawings or whatever. I hope that has set a mark.
What I really liked about this conversation is that Jannicke's work doesn't fit neatly into one single category. It's not just black metal artwork, tattoos, illustrations, or old Nordic ornamentation. It's all of those things at the same time. And I think that's a part of what makes her artwork interesting. The same lines can end up on album covers, on someone's skin, or in a painting inspired by old wood carvings. It's like she said, most of her artwork walks around on two legs. And I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. Because a lot of her legacy isn't hanging in a room somewhere, it's out in the world, on skin, album covers and t-shirts, slowly but surely becoming a part of people's identity. But some of her work does exist as physical pieces as well. Right now, we have a selection of Jannicke's artwork available through our webshop, so please feel free to take a look if you want to. I'll leave a link in the description. Lastly, I want to direct a big thank you to Jannicke for sharing her time and story, and for allowing me to take a closer look at her artwork. And as always, thank you for watching to the end. And I hope to see you again next time.